Coming up next, 5 seemingly passed over hidden gems from the 80s that you're going to want to add to your playlist immediately, including a band whose singer has been a mystery for many years. He's a genius and as solitary as anyone in the history of music. He's like the J.D. Salinger of New Wave. Then there's a song from my favorite band of all time, plus part of an interview with a band that was considered contraband when it was first released. But for a deeply underground album, it has sold over 1 million copies since it came out. These stories and interviews are coming up next on Professor of Rock, brought to you by Zenni Eyewear. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. I tell you what, if music is paramount in your life, we do invite you to join our community. Subscribe below. Do that right now. Subscribe to a channel where you can experience our daily content celebrating the best of the rock era. You can also become a patron to become a curator in our content and help with that. Now, in the past, we've talked about songs from decades that are hidden gems that deserve a second look. And today we're going to cover 5 cult classics from New Wave. I've said it before, a lot of people are sticklers for labels or genres. They may say, that song isn't New Wave, it's post-punk or it's synth-pop. But due to our time and really my goal to focus more on the song and the artist than the genre, I'm just going to keep this simple. Here are 5 New Wave cult classics, hidden gems from the 80s that really deserve a lot of celebration, and add them to your playlist. Number 5, Appetite by Prefab Sprout, a group from Winton Gilbert in Northeast England, written by the reclusive genius and frontman of Prefab Sprout, Paddy McAloon. Paddy's unorthodox lyrical phrasing, which is one of the engrossing traits of his unique songwriting, is one of the many elements that make Appetite such a compelling track. I don't want to sell you lines. I only mean. Paddy has a gifted ability to encapsulate feelings with thought-provoking head and heart therapeutics. Paddy's a bit of an old soul. He's influenced by his passion for a variety of artists like Elvis, Jim Reeves, Brian Wilson, Jimmy Webb, Burt Bacharach, the Beatles, Michael Jackson, and Bruce Springsteen. Appetite is one of many stellar tunes from Prefab Sprout's epic 1985 album, originally titled Steve McQueen. But the band was forced to change the title in the U.S. to Two Wheels Good due to legal conflicts with the actor Steve McQueen's estate. Paddy has always been a bit cryptic about the meaning of Appetite, as he is with all of his compositions, really. He has a never explain your lyrics mantra. Paddy's writing starts and finishes with Paddy being proud of what he's penned, and he's notoriously discerning. Is Appetite, a song about a person or about impulsive behavior? Could be both, could be neither. I interpret the connotation of Appetite in 2 parts. First, Appetite is a song about how we act on our urges, our appetites. As Paddy writes and sings in verse 2, hunger howls, hunger's red. Hunger stays till it's fed. Then it somehow fades, then it somehow leaves your sight, depending on your appetite. Till it's fed, then it's somehow. The second part of Appetite is an introspective narrative from a parent or mentor-like figure advising a child in the last verse. If you grow up to be just like him, just like me, you're fighting for exclusive rights, for honeymoons, each sleepless night, in which case I'll call you Appetite. Sleepless night, in which case I'll call you Appetite. Yes, I think I'll call you Appetite. Regardless of the personal significance of Paddy's construction, Appetite is a new wave cult classic, a real hidden gem. In addition to its unique lyrical structure, Appetite is a wonderfully emotive and melodic ballad that begins with a dreamy synth riff and showcases the harmony of Prefab's Windy Smith's beautiful upper register, blending with Paddy McAloon's mesmerizing earnestness. Appetite and the entire Two Wheels Good album was produced by Thomas Dolby, who also contributed his expert keyboard flourishes. One of my favorite Paddy McAloon lines in Appetite's sagacious chorus, if you take, then put back good, if you still be Robin Hood. If you still be Robin Hood, if your eyes Paddy McAloon has always been ambivalent about the public spotlight, but these days Paddy is even more reclusive, plagued by hearing loss and a degenerative eye condition that affects his vision. Number 4, Uncertain Smile by The, a sonic pantheon about unrequited love composed by the amazingly talented and complex artist Matt Johnson. The story of Uncertain Smile is a tale of two distinctive versions. The original version, recorded in 1981 in New York City, and the reworked version recorded for the band's debut album Soul Mining in '83, recorded in London. We'll open with the account of the original version of Uncertain Smile. The song was initially titled Cold Spell Ahead, inscribed by Matt Johnson in 1979 when he was just 18 years old. The began as a duo in '79 with Matt Johnson teaming up with Keith Laws. It was Laws who suggested to Johnson that they call their group The evolved beyond a duo to a four-piece with rotating musicians that included dignitaries like Johnny Marr, the great Johnny Marr, Simon Fisher Turner, and Gail Ann Dorsey. Laws and Johnson split up in '81. Since Johnson was the sole writer, composer, and musician for The, there was nothing for Laws to do, so he left to pursue other interests. The record label paid for Johnson to fly to New York City to work on a retooling of Cold Spell Ahead, becoming the first version of Uncertain Smile. Johnson was paired up with innovative producer Mike Thorne, fresh off his amazing work on Soft Cell's beloved Tainted Love. We covered that just about a month ago. Johnson was heavily influenced by the New York City club scene, and Thorne loved to be unconventional, so the table was set for the makings of a very interesting recording. Thorne had the idea of bringing the renowned musician Crispin Seo to play alto sax and flute parts that became the distinguishing difference between the original and the reworking of Uncertain Smile. Seo had worked with legends like B.B. King, Ray Charles, Solomon Burke, Tom Waits, and the Rolling Stones. There is an extreme contrast between the flute and the sax riffs performed by Seo on the original version of Uncertain Smile, but it was a masterstroke to include both, enhancing the wild intrigue of the track. Both versions of Uncertain Smile feature a bizarre intro created by an obscure instrument called the xylimba. The combination of the xylimba and the Roland drum kit was a cutting-edge maneuver that really produced a frantic, throbbing, rhythmic effect for the original version of Uncertain Smile. Matt Johnson discovered the xylimba in Manny's Music Store on 48th Street in Manhattan, and he really became fascinated with its toy-like sound. He was determined to incorporate the xylimba in Uncertain Smile, also using it for a longer segment of the extended instrumental bridge in the original 12-inch version. Let's talk about that for a second. You know, a really cool part of the music business in the early 80s was the practice of producing remixed dance and 12-inch versions of single releases, because dance clubs would play more progressive mixes of music, and those dance clubs were a very important outlet to maximize the potential impact of a song's popularity and build a fan base for a developing act. The 12-inch version of Uncertain Smile, it clocked in at a whopping 10 minutes and 6 seconds, and boy, is it illustrious. But according to producer Mike Thorne, it was never intended to run that long, actually. The music kept flowing in the studio, with Thorne and Johnson adding embellishments along the way. The reworking of Uncertain Smile was recorded in London after Johnson wrestled out the prior label commitments to sign a new deal with CBS Records. The later version of the tune was to be placed on the debut album from The, like I said, titled Soul Mining, released in late '83, great album. In this version, they scrapped the horns that were used on the original version, and noticing that they had a beautiful Yamaha C3 baby grand piano in the studio, just waiting to be utilized, Matt Johnson and the crew came to the conclusion that they should change the instrumental outro from brass to an ivory breakdown. Jules Holland, a member of Squeeze at that time, was hired to step in to perform the undeveloped piano solo for the outro. He did the 3.5-minute solo in one take. It's incredible. Number 3, Kiss Off by Violent Femmes. From the Milwaukee Troops' debut self-titled album that is a must-have for your collection, it's really the best cluster of rousing folk, punk, garage rock ever recorded, in my opinion. You can always kiss off into the air on my back and see them stare. Gordon Gano was very clever at writing coming-of-age tunes that became a trademark for Violent Femmes, charged with teenage angst. And the threesome deftly poured out garage stomping jams that were raw and defiant. Kiss Off is one of their signature songs that is a sing-along favorite at Violent Femmes concerts. Now, I asked Gano about the provenance of Kiss Off, and here's what he said, and his bandmates, here's what they said about it. I gotta ask you about Kiss Off, because as a teenager, that speaks to those rough days that you have where you come home and you hear that song and you're like, the whole world can just kiss off into the air. Where did that come from?
Probably like you described. Yeah, there's frustrating times and being in school and not wanting to be there and putting that kind of energy into, like you would have it for listening to the song and then learning it and playing it yourself like so many people do. It's like, well, I was writing it probably with that same kind of
I felt
energy.
the same way, but I manifested it by throwing spitballs at people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you use your time a little more wisely.
Yeah, I really am. I'm really glad that I decided I'm just gonna close the door and stay in my room and write these songs. Wow, what a good decision that was. Yeah, it really worked out. Yeah,
so I met Gordon when he was still in high school. Well, obviously the band started when he was still in high school, but I went over and oh, what do you have? And he goes, oh, here's one I wrote in study hall the other day, and it was like country death song. Oh, that's pretty good work for study hall.
Yeah. Is that how you felt when you heard Kiss Off, man?
Yeah, absolutely. You need someone to scream on the way home from school every day. Definitely. Yeah, all those different anthems. And it was nice too. There's humor in it too, which also is a extremely attractive factor. It's not just a single faceted thing where you feel like this is just anger. There's like snarkiness and depth to it. That pulls you in. That's a great thing.
Because you actually count your anger out. 1, 2, so it's very.
And then speaking of the humor, which I think that that's weaves its way through probably most of the songs in different ways. But that song in particular, I thought it was very funny in counting and saying what something's for and letting out that anger that I decided 8 would be that I would forget what 8 was for. And I wrote it like that rather than, just I happened to forget it one time and then thought that, no, I thought and still think that's kind of funny.
Oh, it's hilarious. I love it.
Building up, getting close to the climax. So I forget what that one was
9
for, but let's get back at 9. And then
10,
and also I've already had this in my mind of which I forget what that one was for. But to me that's funny. I still think it's funny.
Number 2, Silver by Echo and the Bunnymen. The invigorating second single from Echo and the Bunnymen's magnum opus Ocean Rain, Silver is bursting with splendidly nonsensical expression that may boggle the left side of your brain but tantalize the right side. Some of my favorite lines are found in Echo frontman Ian McCulloch's lyrics, such as this gem: "My planet sweet on a silver salver."
My planet sweet on a silver salver.
As a youth, I figured out that a salver is a fancy tray used in formal circumstances where a servant presents something of importance like an official notice in a card or letter. But I could never process the meaning of Mac's next line, "Belled out my worst fears, 'cause man has to be his own savior."
'Cause man has to be his own savior. Blind.
The lyric hits me as something profoundly important, even though I've never been able to put it into context. And these mysterious ramblings, blind sailors, imprisoned jailers, and food for survival thought, brilliant.
God tamers know what to blame us. The sky is blue.
Prose, may be reflective of Mac's obsessive-compulsive disorder that he was diagnosed with as a teenager because it bounces around from one evocative image to another, dancing in a vigorously symphonic melody. The highlight of this new wave cult classic is the ardent declaration of joy Mac was feeling in his marriage for his then wife Lorraine when he belts out, "Just look at you with burning lips, you're living proof at my fingertips."
With burning lips, you're living proof at my face.
The composition of Silver was a collaborative effort by Echo and the Bunnymen principals Ian McCulloch, bassist Les Pattinson, and Will Sargent, along with drummer Pete DeFreitas, who joined the band in 1980, 2 years after their 1978 formation in Liverpool. Sadly, Dave Freitas was killed in a motor crash while traveling to London in 1989. Echo and the Bunnymen is just one of the definitive bands of the new wave era. Ian McCulloch is the Jim Morrison of post-punk with his expansive crooning, and Will Sargent's edgy virtuosity on guitar. Echo had a distinctive sound that influenced a whole new generation of bands. I mean, there's Red Hot Chili Peppers, Coldplay, Flaming Lips, and of course the Killers. I can't say enough about the underappreciated, yet socially awkward Will Sargent. He is one of the most versatile and interesting musicians of the entire 80s. Seriously. Name another new wave guitarist that played a 12-string Rickenbacker. Silver features a lush arrangement of a 35-piece orchestra by British producer and composer Adam Peters, along with his elegant performance on cello and piano. Henry Lustow, the engineer for the Ocean Rain sessions in Paris, assisted on the string passages that give Silver the euphoria of a stunning oceanic vista on a beautiful sunny day.
Laughed in the face of a brand new day.
This has always been one of my favorite songs because it's not really a song, it's a visit to an illustrious sonic dimension.
The sky is blue, my hands untied, a world that's true.
Now, as we go into our number one spot, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. You can get yours below. I love these things. Number one, Rusholme Ruffians by the Smiths. Part of Morrissey's genius as a lyricist was his keen observation of people and shaping his musings to fit within a melodic structure.
By the big wheel generator, a boy is stopped, his money is dropped, and
He could seemingly take anything he had written and format his words into one of Johnny Marr's brilliant musical arrangements. From their 1985 masterwork, Meet His Murder, Rusholme Ruffians is a fine example of the Morrissey-Marr genius. A pugnacious relationship, to say the least, that ironically produced some of the most interesting and emotionally charged compositions ever recorded. As you know, the Smiths are my favorite band ever. Anyway, as Johnny Marr revealed, the primary idea for Rusholme Ruffians was to create a song that captured the raw excitement of youths visiting a Manchester fairground.
she said, how quickly would I die with a jump from the top of the parachute.
Rusholme is an area located 2 miles south of the city center of Manchester, and the Ruffians were a menacing gang of rovers that disrupted the festive excitement of attending a summer fair. For Morrissey, a fair was a microcosm of social stimulus, with the wholesome innocence of childhood combined with delinquency, brutality, and immorality. In Morrissey's words, I quote, "The fairgrounds was really the patch of ground where you learned about everything simultaneously, whether you wanted to or not." End of quote.
Last night to the fair, and the grease in the hair of Speedway.
He borrowed from the memories of British comedian, singer and writer Victoria Wood, shared in her song 14 Again, that she included in a theater production in 1978 and meshed them with his own interpretation. Morrissey was a great admirer of Wood and proudly admitted that several of his songs were inspired by her work.
I wanna be 14 again, tattoo myself with a fountain pen.
Oh, scratch my name on your arm with a fountain pen.
Both Morrissey and Victoria Wood referenced the last night of the fair, the big wheel generator, Brill cream, and scratching on your arm with a fountain pen in their respective lyrics. Just incredible. But Morrissey's view of his experience at the fairgrounds expressed in Rusholme Ruffians is, more threatening, pessimistic, of course, and painful than what Wood portrayed.
live out.
Johnny Marr created his rockabilly riff for Rusholme Ruffians around Scotty Moore's guitar lead on Elvis Presley's 1961 single, Marie's the Name, his latest flame.
And Marie's the name of his latest flame.
Moore was, of course, the touring and studio guitarist for Elvis Presley from 54 to 1968. It was an intentional appropriation that Marr felt would take the listener back in time, so the piece would paint the nostalgic adaptation that they were looking for. The music of Elvis in the late 50s and early 60s was certainly prevalent throughout England along with the rest of the world before the takeover of Beatlemania. The vivid imagery of Morrissey's storyline and Johnny Marr's spirited riff is accentuated by the perfect rattle and roll percussion of drummer Mike Joyce and the unsung bass line groove performed by Andy Rourke. I've always loved Morrissey's adventurous vocal gymnastics whenever he's performed this live.
She said, how quickly would I die?
Well, once a year, when I was a kid, I would spend days in my own small town fair in eastern Idaho. And let's just say that though a continent separates our experiences, Rusholme Ruffians perfectly describes my own experience of the last night at the Eastern Idaho State Fair. So there are my 5 picks for New Wave Hidden Gems. Leave us a comment about these amazing songs below. You can hear the songs in our playlist. You can buy the albums below. Just click on the Amazon links. If you dig this content, you want to be a part of this community, I promise you do. Subscribe below and be a part of our Patreon by curating the greatest songs and artists of the rock era. Help us to do that. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends. Stay safe.